Hi, my name is Ron Galloway. I am
Good.
very pleased to be here today. I am going to talk about something a little bit different, but it actually applies to those of you who have, especially those of you who are doing things with senior living facilities. I'm going to be talking about AI and why AI suddenly seems to be speeding up and getting smarter all of a sudden, and also how that might benefit seniors that are living in senior facilities. Because right now in senior facilities, they just kind of are not creatively engaged and are basically wasting away a little bit. But first, what I want to do is preface what I'm going to talk about by explaining why AI indeed is speeding up. I have a curious theory on why that is, and then I want to talk a little bit about how this could affect seniors in senior living facilities. About 6 months ago, the fellow you see on the screen right there got in a lot of trouble with Google for saying that their AI had become sentient. And he got suspended, and I think ultimately he got fired. And what did he mean by sentient? Sentient is sort of like in this movie Ex Machina, where the robot actually becomes self-aware that she is a robot. She's gotten so smart that she's become self-aware. And the way she got smart was that fellow on the right basically owned a search engine, and all the results from everybody's searches and search engine went into her mind. And at some point, all that knowledge reached a critical mass and made her sentient, made her self-aware. And people sort of feel like we're getting there these days. Another way you can think of what sentience is in the old Daffy Duck cartoon, Duck Amuck, when Daffy Duck starts arguing with the artist, and the artist starts erasing him and redrawing him. Daffy Duck realizes that he is a cartoon character in a cartoon. He's self-aware. And so when people are talking about AI becoming sentient, that's what they mean. It's AI becoming self-aware. And people call it something else, really. Sentience in AI circles is called generalized artificial intelligence, or artificial generalized intelligence. It's either GAI or AGI. But here is how it's defined. People define AI actually being sentient. It's one, as if it can pass a Turing test, which is a set of questions in which they respond like a human would. They're able to score 90% on this schema challenge, which you see. But really the most interesting one to me is number 3, which is the AI needs to be able to score in the 75th percentile of the SAT, and then it has to explain why it answered the way it did. So it's one thing to pass the test, but then it has to explain how it got the answers it did. And so that seems to be the test for sentience or generalized AI right now. Stick with me, I'm going somewhere with this. There's prediction markets, as there are for elections, for essentially scientists and nerds. And in January of 2020, the community prediction of when we were going to reach a generalized AI, an AI that could pass an SAT, would be June 7th, 2053. All right. Then in January 2021, that date changed to 2035. Okay, that's just in the space of a year. That's how fast AI has been getting smarter. Like I said, in 2020, it was going to be the year 2053. 1 year later, it's 2035. And if you look at it now, this will be last month, people think that we're going to get to generalized AI in the year 2028. So 5 years from now. So we went from 35 years from now to 5 years from now in the period of 2 years. That's how fast AI is getting super smart. Within 30 months, the median guess on when we're going to achieve that sort of AI has moved by 25 years. All right. Within the last 6 months, the median has moved by 14 years. In other words, we're going to achieve it much, much sooner than anybody ever guessed because it's learning so fast. Now, one reason it's learning so fast is because computers are getting so much better. This is Apple's latest chip right here, the A16 chip, and it's quite small, and it has 16 billion transistors on it that can do 17 trillion operations per second. All right. So computing power is getting stronger and stronger, and it's able to handle more data being thrown at it than it's ever been able to handle before. When you hear people talk about AI today, you're going to hear them refer the main AI model overall that you'll hear people refer to it as is GPT-3, which is generative pre-trained transformer. And a transformer is just something that takes a bunch of knowledge and makes some sense out of it. And in a general sense, what you're doing is you're giving some text as a prompt, and then it'll give you back text that continues a prompt. For instance, you give it the first part of the sentence, and let's say I stopped right there, then it would finish my sentence for me. And the more information you feed into these things, the better the AI seems to get. But there's something else going on that we don't understand right now. This is one of Google's AIs. It's called Gato. And Gato, if we look from the left to the right, Gato just doesn't take text. Gato takes all kinds of inputs. It can take images, it takes text. If a robot is doing something, it can look at the robot's actions. So if you're in a factory, that would be an input for it. Interestingly, as I alluded to earlier, we're talking about senior citizens. What this is going to allow in senior living facilities is the aggregation of all of the inputs that will exist then, because within a couple of years, all seniors are going to be wearing an Apple Watch, which will monitor their blood pressure and their heartbeat. And if they fall down, it will be aware of that. It'll continuously monitor their gait. So think of those things also as inputs on the left side of this slide that then get put into Gato, that then makes a decision or an analysis based on this data. For instance, on the new Apple Watch, it measures your gait and your balance over the period of a year. It gathers that data, and if you start walking a little bit unsteadily, or if you're taking shorter steps, then that could be an indication of Parkinson's or early onset of some type of dementia. So what we're doing now, where I'm going with this, is that we're finally able to make sense of all the data from all these sensors that we have. All the sensors are on our phone, the sensors that are going to be in the facilities, for instance, senior living facilities, which will include the HVAC, fire alarms, and pretty much everything inside, and it'll integrate that with the sensors in people's rooms, motion sensors. For instance, if someone is in the restroom for 2 hours and that's outside their norm, then the AI will issue an alarm saying something might be wrong. Anyway, where I'm getting at is these models are getting smarter and smarter now, but they're building themselves on things other than text. It used to just be text, but now it can look at pictures and decide things. For instance, that first picture up on the left, 3 different AIs gave 3 different answers. The colorful ceramic toys are on the living room floor. It's a living room floor with 3 different color deposits on the floor and a room with a long red rug, a TV, and some pictures. So 3 different AIs interpreted that in different ways. And you can see that along the rest of the pictures that I'm showing you. What's interesting is the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words, really seems as though it's starting to apply in artificial intelligence in terms of how smart it's getting. It's looking like the reason AI is getting so much smarter, so much faster, is that it learns more quicker from images than it does from text. And this is where things start getting interesting. They found out, I mentioned transformers before. This is another AI. You see GPT-3. This one's called Chinchilla, which is by DeepMind, which is Google. Excuse me. And they found out that essentially the more pictures they feed it, the less transformers, or in other words, the less computing power they have to devote to it. So it's a more efficient AI. Google has another one, which is called Palm, which is a bit interesting in that you don't necessarily need to train it. In other words, you can just throw data at it. Let me give an example. Tesla's AI needs to be trained, right? You need to drive around in a Tesla. It needs to see red lights. It needs to see stop signs. It needs to see pedestrians. It has to be trained. Well, AIs now are really doing the training themselves. This language called Palm does training for itself out of the box. So in the Tesla example, it could actually, you could slap this onto a Tesla and it would immediately be able to figure out what to do. Now here's where things get a little bit weird. Google's engineers with this latest AI that they have don't understand why it's able to do this. They don't get it. They didn't design it to do it. It just started doing it, and they don't know why. So where we're going is getting kind of weird. I talked about prompting the computer earlier. It used to be with the AI, you could say Roger has 5 tennis balls. He buys 2 more cans of tennis balls. Each can has 3 tennis balls. How many tennis balls does he have now? And the computer would say the answer is 11. The AI would say that. Well, 2 years ago, that was a big deal. That was a huge, big deal. It's like, oh my gosh, the computer can figure out from this text the answer, right? We give it some text, it gives us an answer. Well, what's happening now, if you go over to the right, is it will give you the answer, but then in its output, it explains how it got to the answer. This is what I was talking about when I was referring to the SATs earlier, being able to explain their answers to you. So in other words, we're not prompting the AI to say the answer is 11 anymore. We're not teaching it to get to that answer. It's learning itself. It's reasoning out itself how to come to that answer. What's going on now is we're able to predict language, which we were never able to do before. Parameters, which is just a fancy word for input. Parameters, how much data you are feeding in to an AI. When we were feeding a few years ago 8 billion parameters into it, which was a big thing, it would answer questions like that one I just gave you where the answer is 11. It could do basic arithmetic and It's sort of what made Google Translate work. It would understand language. Excuse me. When we go from 7 billion parameters to 62 billion parameters, its translation is better. It's able to summarize articles that it reads in magazines. You can ask a question to get an answer, like Siri, and the arithmetic abilities of it are a lot stronger. When you see code completion right there, what that means is it can write its own computer code. So rather than hiring a bunch of programmers to write code, the AI, which is code, writes code. So you have code writing code, which speeds up time almost immeasurable. If we move to 540 billion parameters, in other words, more data we're feeding into it, then the AI can explain to us why a joke is funny. It can do reasoning. It can semantically parse things that are in a book. In other words, you can figure out their meaning, and it can do question and answers with physics problems. So the more data we're putting into it now, the more different uses and things that it will do. Once again, talking about senior living facilities, or really any facility, what that means is the data that is being collected by the sensors in that facility, the more data that keeps getting fed into it, the more things you're going to be able to do with that data. For example, if you're a hospital, you could combine traffic data and patient appointment data and weather data and see that it might rain, which means there might be a traffic jam. So patient X might be 10 or 15 minutes late for their appointment. It's these sort of things which we've not been able to do before, which AI is lending itself to do. This is code translation. On the left, you see a language called C, which is a very common language, and it translates it. You're asking it to translate it from C to Python, which if your kids are in college now, be sure and tell them to learn Python. And it does it easily. That's hard to do. It's taking computer code and rewriting it in another language and having it still work. And like I said, what it's also beginning to do now is not only translate computer code from one language to another, but write its own code. It like understands a function such as print to this printer, and you don't need to write something in each language to do that. It can basically make a library of things for that, for you. What we're finding is, in a weird way, in a spooky way, we don't need more computing power. What's happening is, we used to think that, especially in medicine, we used to think that all the data had to be clean, perfectly scrubbed. But what we're finding out is that's not true. More data is better than clean data when you're talking about teaching AIs to learn. So the more data you can dump in from the more sensors you can dump in, the smarter the AIs can get. And we could take years and years to make advancements in science, or we could do things fast. And everybody wants to do things fast. And this is what is helping us. So why is AI getting so smart so fast? I think, as I alluded to before, it has to do with the fact that it's understanding pictures. And I'll give you an example. In the 1850s, people were trying to solve the problem of what a benzene ring looked like, what the formation was of a benzene ring. And they couldn't get it. I can't remember the scientist's name now, but people worked on this problem for years. In the middle, you see a benzene ring. Nobody had really thought that there were double bindings between 3 of the pairs of carbons before. That hadn't occurred to anybody. And one day, a scientist took a nap. Can't remember his name. Took a nap and dreamed of a snake eating its tail. And in that moment, he realized exactly what a benzene ring looked like, right? So a snake eating its tail told him, solved the problem for him of what a benzene ring is. And I think that's what's happening now. I think so many images from so many different places, Instagram, Facebook, Google, everywhere, are readily available and being dumped into AIs now, that the AIs are not learning from text anymore. They're learning from pictures, and they're drawing their own conclusions from pictures. I occasionally, as a hobby, write bad pulp fiction. And this is one of the bad books I'm writing. But what's interesting about this, I wanted to give you all an example, is I got stuck. I had writer's block. So I wrote the sentence you see underlined at the top. I landed at the airport in Madrid and went to pick up a car for the drive to the naval base in Rota, Spain. Okay, that's all I wrote. The rest of the paragraph you see there was written by an AI. I did nothing else. And what's really crazy about that is if you read down there, you realize that the AI wrote an interaction between the main character and a guy in a gas station. And the guy's basically, he asks why there's so much traffic. He's like, oh, it's a holiday and all the Spaniards are on vacation and they're driving to the beaches. And he says, is there any way I can get around this traffic? The guy says, yeah, you can go at a time when everyone else is at work. All right. It cracked a joke. The AI cracked a joke. So that's where we're getting now. That's how sophisticated these things are. And it's not just in terms of words, it's also in terms of listening and dictation. And OpenAI is a company owned by a consortium of companies, and they have a voice model that now is so good. It's an AI model that listens to you. And you know how Siri will listen to you and you can get some translation off of it. Now it's so insanely smart, and I believe it's seeing text as pictures, that I believe that the graphical user interface, we're using mice and keyboards now, is going to give way to simple voice recognition. If you look on the bottom right, what it does, AI now is translating voice into pictures. All right, and that's how it's getting better. It's because it doesn't look at sound as sound, it's looking at sound as pictures. And I was talking about earlier, it's interpreting pictures. These are the lyrics to Money, Money, Money by ABBA, who are Swedish, so their English isn't all that good. And Whisper is the name of the AI that does this. And Whisper did essentially a perfect translation of what they were singing. All right, so I believe that that the voice, and this is once again where it leads into old people, seniors, not old people, I'm a senior, get frustrated sometimes working with computers. But if we make it super easy for them to control their environments with their voice, then their quality of life gets better. This time last year, artificial intelligence drawing was okay. Now it's getting super ridiculous. Many of you may have heard of Midjourney. This is me. I told Midjourney, I gave it this prompt. Remember, I talked to y'all about prompts before. I said, I want you to draw Compostela de Santiago, it's a city in Spain, in the style of Giorgio de Chirico, who was sort of a surrealist Italian painter. And it did a perfect job. That's what the AI gave me back. I told them I wanted a blueprint of a hospital as designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, but I wanted the blueprint to look as though it was drawn by Leonardo da Vinci. That's what it gave me in roughly 15 seconds. That's pretty smart. I told the AI I wanted it to give me a hospital at night in the style of a Scooby-Doo cartoon, in the animation style of Scooby-Doo. Look what it gave me. That's pretty darn close. I told it I wanted it to give me a senior living facility in the Bahamas on the beach. Look at that. In 15 seconds, that's what it gave. All right. Computers are thinking in symbols now, and that's why it's speeding up so much. I asked for some more examples of facilities on the beach in the Bahamas. I asked the computer for a hospital waiting room in the style of Frank Lloyd Wright. I showed this slide at an architect's conference, and the room gasped. Nobody could believe it. When I talk to healthcare people about this, they're intrigued because we're running out of doctors for sure. Computers are getting more powerful. AI is getting more powerful. More sensors are gathering more data. And so what's going on is this is leading us to a point where we don't need all the doctors, right? We don't need that. All right, now I'd said I was going to speak a little bit about senior living communities. What does this mean for senior living communities? My big frustration with senior living communities is not the facilities themselves, but what goes on inside the facilities. I believe people's lives, I devote a lot of thought to this. I believe people's lives could be better. And this is where I believe the AI comes in, but in a way that I don't think you might have expected. As before, I said, I think voice tech is going to become the graphical user interface, the mouse and the keyboard, in other words, for seniors. They'll just be able to say something and it'll happen. Sort of like you can say it to Siri or Alexa now, but much, much more sophisticated. I think within communities, within a senior living community, AI is going to learn specific things about that community. It'll learn the members of the community, their interests, the staff, and figure out ways particular to that community. It will figure out things that we hadn't thought of doing before within those communities. I made a movie about Walmart several years ago. And you can think of not just a senior living facility, but any huge facility like a Walmart, kind of, if you look at it from above, you have your cars going in one end, or your trucks coming in one end, bringing materials. You have cars leaving, taking materials, going out, and all the processing going on inside. Same as the senior living facility, right? You have people coming, materials being delivered in, lots of actions going on inside, and then, materials going out. It already is like a big computer chip. These facilities are becoming essentially computer chips, and they're learning, and AI is allowing them to, it's going to allow them to do more things than we thought of. I gave a speech recently on senior living, and just for fun, I asked an AI to outline my speech for me. And this is what it gave me. And I gave the speech that ironically, I gave the speech on AI that an AI told me to give. That's where we're getting these days. What's super important also, I think there's two big problems in senior facilities that AI can address. It can buffer loneliness. All right, I think, wouldn't it be nice, and this is possible today, if you were able to say, if you're sitting in your room in a senior living facility and you're able to say, read me Lord of the Rings in my daughter's voice. So in other words, it sounds like my daughter is reading me Lord of the Rings. That's possible right now. Or you could have the AI talk to you in a staff member's voice who you're super comfortable with, right? Or you could just have the AI keep you company. I can't tell you how many times I've asked Siri for something and then thanked her when she's given me the answer. The other thing, so I think it's going to help with loneliness, but the main thing I think of is, I think what hurts people in senior living facilities is they're not being creative. They kind of just sit there. And I'm not going to read this study, but allegedly creativity decreases around age 60 because people just sit around and do nothing. This is a friend of mine. She is 65 years old. She does not look it. She is in a very famous band. She's 65. She just released a new album. She just got off a tour, right? She is about to begin writing a book. I believe one of the reasons she looks so young is because she's so creative all the time. And creativity is greater than, in a senior living facility, people sitting around watching Fox News all day. We need seniors to be creative. Seniors can say, paint me the Sagrada Familia in the style of William Blake. I do this all day long, and it's very gratifying to me. Or in a very short time, you'll be able to say to an AI, show me the street that I grew up on as it looked when I was 5. And it'll show you your home street and take you back in time and paint you a picture or make you a very realistic photograph of what that was. Or if your grandkids send you pictures, make those pictures 3D for me. Or make a symphony for me that mixes Bach and Radiohead. Or show me the ballet La Bayadere as performed on the beach in the Bahamas. AI already is capable of doing all these things. And so I think what's going to happen, AI is getting smarter way quicker than we thought it was, and voice interfaces are getting superior now. And I think those two together open up a world of possibilities that will enrich the lives of seniors. How is AI learning so fast? Don't care. Doesn't matter. It just is, and that is awesome. And as I go, thank you for listening to me, by the way. I asked the AI, I said, show me the speaker Ron Galloway in retirement. And this is what it gave me. The AI, I hope my body type doesn't look like that, but the AI knows my name is Galloway. Well, that looks suspiciously like Ireland. And it knows that I'm from Augusta, and it drew me on a golf course. AI is very smart. Thank you for your time and attention, and have a great rest of the conference.
All right. Well, I know we don't have Ron here today to thank him for that presentation. I know that was, some fascinating stuff Liz just put in the chat. Is there anyone who would like to jump off of the mic and jump off mute and talk about the topic? We do have about 10 minutes where we would have done Q&A, but I'm really actually interested in hearing what you all thought about the presentation. I know it was a little bit of a sidestep from our real estate investing concentration, but all of this AI is kind of a hot topic and something that is pretty interesting. So is there anybody who would like to just jump in? Feel free. I mean, anything you want to say?
Hey, Tammy.
Hey, Charlie. Aloha.
How are you doing? Aloha.
Good. I'd love to hear what do you think? What did you think?
Well, I'm a big believer in AI, and the reason why I say that is because one of my companies is a tech company I started many years ago, and which specializes in infrastructure for fiber optics. And
cool.
I was talking about it back then. I said, where the industry is right now in technology, and that was back, over 20 years ago. I said, where the technology is at that point, I said, this infrastructure is all going in, and all of these things. I remember being at a conference and that was in San Diego, and I was speaking at the conference for the military community. And I said, I grabbed the remote control and I said, you see this right here? I said, this is going to disappear in a few years. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I said, you're not going to be using these pretty soon. I said, all of this infrastructure that we're putting in for right now is a precursor to what's coming, that's being developed. And so the changes that were occurring so rapidly at the time that the technology was switching, at that time was switching about every 5 years, the upgrades, and it jumped dramatically to every year. Then it jumped to 6 months. And so Ron talking about the AI now, because we were back then, what I had told them was, I said, you're going to be able to walk up to whatever device it is and speak to it.
Mhm.
with this the size of these pipes that we're putting in. And I said these things are very non-invasive, but they're designed for you to transfer so much information in such high density in such a short period of time that all these other devices are only bottlenecking the problem. And so seeing where AI is now and at the rate it's growing at it, I mean, it's almost scary because it's learning, right? So much faster than you can even think, for us. Although they say that the human mind still moves much faster because we create what's being created, So, yeah, who puts in the data? So I know there's some comments that were coming in from Leah and from Kathy. So those are the things that I think make a big difference in knowing what's going to matter for us in the future is who's inputting that data. That's key to everything. So, but it's here. That's why I'm laughing for 20 years ago, and it's here, and it's moving so fast now that some of this stuff is really surprising to me now. So it's incredible. That's an awesome presentation from Ron. Awesome presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. I'm not sure if it's me or it's kind of breaking up for me. So I think it might be me though, but thank you. I know I agree. And it's kind of, it's hard to even wrap your head around, like as AI gets smarter and smarter off of everything that's being input into it. And then I guess Ron was saying, like, when's the point when it just kind of takes over things for itself and we don't have to input anything anymore. So let's see. Liz says AI doesn't like him talking about it. Yeah, see? It's going to start thinking for itself and then thinking for us. And then what's going to happen then? So does anybody else want to chime in? I think I saw Alex off of, yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
Alex.
Hey, I had the opportunity to know Ron and see his presentation. So whenever he comes up with this stuff, it kind of makes you think. So as he was making presentation about AI, I was also on background doing some Google search as far as how AI is transforming the real estate. Turns out that there are other companies and tools that are now being developed, literally. So if you're an investor, so on. So I just looked at some of those because it's kind of one of those things that you don't really think about. It's just happening in the technology, but how it applies specifically to what you're doing, being in this particular case in real estate. So you can go ahead and search it and you'll find these things, and it's amazing, right? So as we were listening to Ron, that things can get so advanced as a real estate investor, you can apply some AI into that and see how it goes. It probably enhances or augment your capacity to look at a deal, right? Especially when it relies on data and information when you're looking at a market that you're not too familiar with. Those type of tools will be made available to you. And I was curious to find out from Ron, what is the preferred app for people like ourselves, when he was describing all these different things, what he was doing. I was curious to find out what was the app that he was using. I'd like to try it.
Yeah, I think Liz had put in one of them. Liz, which one did you put in there in the chat? He was using some, was it Skynet? I see SK put in Skynet, and then Liz, I'm not sure if you know exactly which one I'm talking about. Oh yeah, Midjourney. That was it. Midjourney.com. Ron said he was using, I think that was what he was generating all of those graphics with, where he was just kind of like inputting different ideas and everything. And it was kind of jumping in with that. So, but I'll ask him if he could share with us everything that he's been using so that we can, share it with all of you. Perhaps I can ask him to maybe put on a follow-up presentation for our mentoring group in the next coming months, just so we can continue to talk about the topic and further explore that. So
Very cool. So
yeah.
for what it's worth, just extend my regards to Ron and just tell him that at least Alex got a lot out of it.
All right. Okay. Well, he'll be happy to hear about that.
Yeah.
He'll be excited to know that. So thank you. Thanks again, Alex.